Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you can all hear me. So welcome to our meeting on the Inter-American Foundation's experience with ex-post assessments of their grants. Today we have two people from IAF joining us, Emilia Rodríguez-Stein and Miguel Cuevas. So just before I turn it over to Emilia and Miguel, I just want to say a little bit about who they are at the IAF. So Emilia is director of the evaluation office at the IAF, where she's been for the past 15 years. She is in charge of IAF's monitoring, evaluation, and financial audits for all their projects, and has served as a board member of the Eastern Evaluation Research Society. Prior to joining the IAF, she worked as an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland, University College, and in senior research positions at several institutions, including the Association of American Medical Colleges. Miguel is analysis and evaluation specialist at the IAF, where he's worked since 1999. And Miguel redesigned the grassroots development framework, which is the Foundation's principal data collection tool. He also supervised a team of in-country contractors tracking grant results of 240 projects, and over the last 5 years, he's been conducting 13 ex-post evaluations of grants in 9 countries. So Emilia and Miguel will present for about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll have questions, and we'll have some time for Q&A. As usual, everyone will be on mute for the duration, but if you have questions, please feel free to submit them via the question box, and I'll pose them to Miguel and Emilia once the presentation is done. So Emilia, I will turn it over to you now.
Okay. Here we go. Good afternoon. This is Emilia. Thank you, Laia, for this incredible opportunity to share with all of you, members of Interaction, the experience that the IAF has in the monitoring and evaluation, and specifically the experience of the last 3-4 years conducting ex-post assessments. The presentation is very straightforward. I will, when this moves, what happens? I will talk very briefly about the Inter-American Foundation, how we monitor and evaluate our grant results, and we will speak a little bit about ex-post assessment, why we do that, how it came about, the data collection methodology, the strengths and challenges that we have conducting the evaluation. And at the end, we will show you and speak a little bit about an example of a project evaluated recently. So let me begin with who we are, who the Inter-American Foundation is. The IAF is an independent U.S. foreign assistance agency. The funds, the budget comes from appropriation, generally 21 million per year. And it was created in 1969 as an alternative to foreign aid. We don't go to governments, we don't have offices in any of the countries. And we work in 22 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. It is a responsive agency, meaning we do not design the projects, we do not implement them, and we tried in the best of our ability to not interfere with the project design and implementation of the project. In average, the grants are about $212,000. Some can be a little bit more, some can be a little bit less. The grant duration is about 3 years, although some of them are amended time-wise to continue with project activity up to 4 or 5 years. overall, the IAF in 45 years of working in Latin America and the Caribbean, we have established partnership with thousands of NGOs, small and large, base group organizations, cooperatives, federations, and as well as corporate foundations. Those are our partners in development in Latin America and the Caribbean. In a given fiscal year, we have about 260 projects that are active in our portfolio. So the monitoring and evaluation at the IAF of all this investment in Latin America is a very important initiative. It's very important activity at the IAF. And for that, we have created to monitor our projects, to know the results of the project, funded by us, not implemented by us. We created the grassroots development framework. A little bit later, I will explain to you or give you an image of what the grassroots development is. But in general, it's a menu of 45 indicators. Each indicator, or in general the indicators, related to project results that our grantees come about during the life of the project. So that tool is being implemented, is being utilized in the ground by in-country professionals. We call them data verifiers or / monitors. They are professionals from background, with background in social sciences, statistics, monitoring and evaluations. A lot of them teach at local universities. So they are a great asset, the human capital of the IAF in each country. And through the years, with my team, including Miguel, we have trained them to do the monitoring, to follow the guidance, the guidelines of monitoring evaluation, as well as the guidelines of the U.S. federal government in each of the countries. So their job began with an orientation visit at the start of the project, and you will see in the ex-post assessment how relevant, how significant is this process for the ex-post assessment. So they begin orienting our grantees on the requirements of data collection, because they are required to submit every 6 months a report to the Inter-American Foundation outlining and specifying the result of the project to comply with a huge government law that we have, GIPRA, the Government Results Act of 1993. So in that orientation visit with our grantees collaboratively, they select the indicators that best fit the project. If it is health, the indicators will be related to health. If it is income generation, the indicators will be related to income generation. Then after that orientation visit, they will visit consistently every 6 months or a year to verify and complete the information collected by the grantee. That's another very important thing that we have at the IAF. We do not collect the data directly from our project, the results of our project. Our grantees are trained, are advised, are monitored to do data collection. And the role of the data verifier is to train our grantees in the best possible ways, very cost-effective techniques to collect data so they can report to the IAF. A very important function as well is at the end of the project, they describe a project history with our grantees. They go visit them at the end, and they accumulate the results during the life of the project and analyze, and they assess what happened, what worked with the project, what didn't, and why. And all of this is done with the grantees so they can learn what from their own projects. And of course, it's a learning space for the data verifiers as well for the Inter-American Foundation. part of that monitoring system include a financial audit, also dependent from my office. We also had in-country auditors trained to do that, to follow the yellow book and all the auditing requirements prescribed by the federal government here in the United States. So these auditors visit our grantees and review the budget, how it was applied, the invoices, the accounting of the project. And they submit the report to us, to the Inter-American Foundation, with the findings, the financial findings, and we immediately address the findings to assure that the project will be successful. And we have another in-country contractor helping us with the logistic and administrative support of all the actions in the country, also based in each one of the countries. Again, and this I will kind of repeat what I already said. The function of our data verifiers, monitors are to provide technical assistance to our grantees, specifically on data collection, do an orientation, help the grantees select the indicators that will best fit their project. They do, very important for our ex-post assessment, is to do a comprehensive baseline collection at the start of the project. Conduct the semi-annual monitoring visit, write the project history, and now we had added an extra function to our in-country data verifiers, which is conduct the ex-post assessment together with our my office at the Inter-American Foundation. And here is a data verifier in El Salvador talking to one representative of a grantee, verifying the information. And to the right, you have the grassroots development framework. That is the whole idea, the notion of the result that we think, we believe, our grants provide to their communities. The idea is that we fund organizations, and we want the organization, NGOs or base groups, to improve the organizational capacity as well as their practices so they can continue developing their own communities. We assume also that the organization empowered with that capacity will help individuals develop their own capacities to improve their own conditions in their communities. And at the other end, at the upper level, we also assume that this capacity created among these organizations will also help the society at large, specifically to change the policy environment as well as the community norms that will be conducive to more sustainable, more successful grassroots development in their communities. Here again, there is another more detailed representation of the grassroots development. This is what is included in each one of the windows, something that I didn't mention before. The results can be very tangible as well as very intangible and everything in between. So those are the laws, for example, take at the bottom of individuals. We have self-esteem, cultural identity, creativity, critical reflection. All of these are very specific indicators that have concrete measurements on how to collect the information and send it to the Inter-American Foundation. And here I will conclude my, my participation in the presentation, and I'm going to pass the microphone to my colleague Miguel Cuevas, who's sitting to my left. And at the end, I will be very delighted to respond to all of your questions and concerns and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emilia. I'm going to start the presentation by posing the question, why does the IAF do ex-post assessment? And the answer is that we're always looking for ways to improve our grant-making decision. We need to know what works, what does not, and why. So for us, there was a choice between doing ex-post assessment, as we call it, or ex-post evaluation, and to do a more rigorous impact evaluation. We opted to do the ex-post assessment because costs are relatively lower. For us, given what Emilia explained, the type of data that we collect throughout the life of the project, using our in-country data verifiers, we have the baseline data and we have data throughout the life of the project. So we thought what we need to do is a less rigorous evaluation at the end, and the ex-post assessment to us was more feasible because the cost of conducting an ex-post evaluation for us runs about $10,000 compared to an impact evaluation where you have a control group, and usually, based on our experience, that costs close to $100,000, sometimes even more than that. So our decision was to do a less rigorous evaluation and at a lower cost. Also, one of the other advantage of ex-post assessment is that they can be quickly completed. And also it will allow to explore issues that may not have been anticipated during the planning of the project. So they're more flexible than the impact evaluation. When is the best time to conduct the assessment? Based on our experience, the best time to revisit a project is about 5 years after its termination. And the reason is because periods below 5 years do not provide sufficient time to measure outcomes and sustainability of grant activities. Also, based on our experience, we have conducted assessment or evaluation of projects that have closed 10 or 15 years ago. And it's extremely difficult to track people after 10 or 15 years has passed. People tend to move, and other key players have moved on to other jobs. So it's very difficult to find the key players. So we thought 5 years, based on our test, was the ideal time frame to conduct the ex-post assessment. What criteria we use to select a grant for assessment? One of the criteria is that the grant organization is still active. And if not active, at least that we can identify and locate the project coordinator or the technical staff. That way we can ask the questions that are relevant for the study. Another of the criteria is no early termination of the grant. Sometimes there are internal problems with the grantee organization, and the IAF has to terminate, for whatever reason, the grant early. So we want to conduct the assessment, the ex-post assessment, on grants that came to their full term of completion. Also, another criteria is that the grant have not previously been evaluated by the IAF. Over the last 10 or 15 years, we have conducted over 50 evaluations. And we don't want to cause any burden on those ex-grantees that were already evaluated with another evaluation. So that's one of the criteria, that they have not been previously evaluated. And of course, the willingness of the grantee organization to cooperate in the study. One last criteria that we use is that we select the grant based on the interest of the foundation according to thematic areas. How do we collect the data? Well, we use questionnaire, we use one-on-one interviews, we use focus group, which is very important because in the case of the IAF, we actually work in remote areas of different countries. So to bring the beneficiary to conduct interview with the beneficiaries, we bring them all together. We conduct focus group. That's less expensive to conduct than if you go on a one-on-one interview case. We also use administrative records, direct observation, and external documents. Also, to prepare for the task of the data collection, the data verifier use the orientation visit report, as well as the GDF reports that are submitted every 6 months, like Emilia mentioned. And we also use the project history that was drafted by the data verifiers. Who do we interview? We select beneficiaries, the project staff, the grantee partners, and other stakeholders. And you might ask, why is it that the data verifier that are the ones that provide data verification and monitoring during the life of the project are the ones conducting the interviews during the ex-post assessment? Based on our experience, they're the best people to conduct the evaluation because they're familiar with the IAF funding philosophy. With other contractors, we have found that this is a steep learning curve for them to get familiar with the way that we fund projects. Unlike other development agencies, like Emilia explained, we're a responsive agency. We don't provide technical assistance, and we don't provide any training. We just fund good ideas from grassroots groups. So the data verifiers understand that philosophy of the IAF, and they have knowledge of the key players, of the project coordinator, of the beneficiary, of the technical staff. They also have an understanding of the cultural tradition in the area, and they have established a good rapport with beneficiaries and others throughout the life of the grant. How is the field work conducted? Well, the IAF prides itself in assisting base groups in areas where no other development agency works. That means in remote areas. To keep costs down, the field work for the assessment is done in one visit over several days. If the project is near the evaluator's home, they could go ahead and visit the grantee and the beneficiary as many times as they need to collect the information. But when it's a remote area, to keep costs down, we limit the visit to only one over several days. And usually when the data verifier or evaluator conduct the study, they're always accompanied during the fieldwork operation by one of our evaluation office staff. The respondents are selected on a random basis based on accessibility and safety of the area. Sometimes we work in areas that are dangerous. In the case of Colombia, for example, there are areas that are hard to get to because of safety concern. So we always try to select those beneficiary or those projects that are in a safe area, even though we fund projects that are in dangerous areas too. And priority is given to respondent interview during the regular data verification visit. And the reason is because we like to measure the change over time. So there are beneficiaries that have been interviewed during the regular monitoring visit during the life of the project. So we like to go back to them 5 years later to see how well they're doing. What are we measuring? Well, the grant, what we're trying to measure is if the grant made a difference at the 3 level of the GDF cone. That's the one that Emilia presented. That means at the individual or family level, at the organization level, or at the society or community level, where it made a difference. And our management team, as well as our program officer, they want to know what worked, what did not, and why. So to measure that, we use 3 different measurement points. All the questions are framed so we can capture the information before the start of project activities, at the end of the project, and at the time of the ex-post assessment. So we have 3 different measurement points to make comparison. Once the data is collected, it's processed by the data verifier, it's analyzed, and he or she drafts a comprehensive report based on the findings and based on his or her analysis. The report is submitted to the IAF for review and for our comments, and it's sent to the evaluation office and also to our program office, which we both provide comments to the data verifier, and if there's a need for more information, we ask the data verifier to collect that information. When the report is finalized, the data verifier submits the report back again to the IAF, and we summarize the report and post the results to the IAF website. Now I'm going to show you one of the projects we recently evaluated. It was located in the Highlands of Piura in northern Peru. The organization is PIDECAFE, Programa Integral para el Desarrollo del Café. And the original grant was for $264,000, even though we gave them an extension of an additional $50,000. So the grant came up to a total value of $314,000. PIDECAFE is an NGO that provides training and technical assistance to coffee growers in Piura. Keep in mind, these are small coffee growers. They have less than 3 acres of land where they grow their coffee, and that's their only source of income. The farmers also cultivate sugarcane, but the sugarcane that they cultivate in Piura actually was not to sell, but it was used to make cañazo. Cañazo is a local alcoholic beverage that they consume at home. So the sugarcane, they grew coffee and they grew sugarcane. And in 2001, the international price of coffee had gone down 66% down from the previous high in 1997. By 2002, the price of coffee bottomed out at 30 cents per pound, the lowest in 30 years. So PIDECAFE, which is an NGO providing training and technical assistance to different local coffee grower associations, decided to do something about it. And they sent a proposal to the IAF, a proposal to diversify the farmer's source of income. Also, they took the opportunity in the proposal to ask or to bring women into the production process for the women to participate in the local producer association, which at that time in 2001 were exclusively for men. So that was another part of the proposal. And they decided also to help the farmer as a second source of income to process that sugar cane into brown sugar and to sell the brown sugar in the local market. That way to offset the deep decline in the price of coffee. The findings that data verifiers documented was that during the period of the grant, more than 1,000 farmers or coffee growers were trained, and 20% of these people that they trained were women. They also constructed 14 sugar mills, even though the target was only 10 sugar mills. And production went from actually 0 of brown sugar, because they did not produce brown sugar. They were using the sugar cane, as I told you before, to produce the local alcoholic beverage. So they started producing sugar in 2002, and it went from 0 to 656 tons by 2011, generating $1.35 million for 300 families. Now, there were some unexpected adjustments that they had to make. PIDECAFE was new to sugarcane production, especially to make brown sugar. They wanted to make brown sugar, organic brown sugar, to sell in the local market. So they went to Colombia, and in Colombia they saw different artisan production of brown sugar. And they came back to Peru, and that's a proposal that they submitted to the IAF to build 10 sugar mills costing approximately $5,000 each. And as you can see in the photo on the left, that's what they envisioned that it was going to look like. In the meantime, one of the coffee buyers, a French coffee buyer of them, asked PIDECAFE if he could take a sample of the brown sugar to test it in France. And he came back with very good results. And from that point on, the French buyer told PIDECAFE that they could buy all the sugar that they could produce, all the brown sugar that they could produce. So since they have a market already assured, PIDECAFE decided to switch from selling in the local market to selling in the international market. Also, there was an Italian buyer that did the same thing. He tested the sugar market, the brown sugar market in Italy, and things went well. So PIDECAFE had 2 guaranteed buyers of all their production, and that's what they decided to go to sell their sugar production to the Europeans as opposed to the local market. But as time went on, and as the demand increased, the European came with a higher health requirement or food safety requirement for the processing of the sugarcane to brown sugar. So you can see in the photo in the right the type of infrastructure that it finally required to process the sugarcane in a very sanitary condition. The inside of the structure is tiled, and they have steel cauldron, and the cost of building that infrastructure was $100,000 per mill. So the cost went up from $5,000 to $100,000. One of the results that was measured 5 years later is that consumption of cañazo, the alcoholic beverage, went down substantially as sugarcane was diverted to produce brown sugar. And why? Because farmers were getting 4 times the price for the brown sugar that then they were getting for the alcoholic beverage. So they started selling the sugarcane to the brown sugar to the European. So cañazo consumption went down, and as a result, also it decreased domestic violence against women in that area, because the alcoholic beverage fueled domestic violence in the area when they were using the sugarcane to make cañazo. Also, the local authority, this also was an unexpected result. The local authority, seeing how well things were going with the European buyers, they decided to help the local growers by constructing a dirt road, 11.5-mile dirt road, where they provided all the equipment and the money, and the local people provided the labor. In an interview with the mayor, the mayor also mentioned that there was a reduction in the demand of government service, especially health care. Why? Because since now people were selling their brown sugar, they got more money to spend on medical service. They were going to private doctors as opposed to waiting in public clinic for free health service. So that was a benefit for the local authority too. Some of the lessons. Well, the success of PIDECAFE is due to the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. The change from the vision of selling to in the local market to selling in the international market, which I explained that was fantastic for them, for the coffee growers, but also it brought challenge. And the biggest challenge is the cost of building those infrastructure. They were not able to complete all the mills that they had envisioned because of the spiraling cost of each sugar mill. But they also learned their lesson. The grantee organization learned the lesson of how to budget. So the next time that they approach the IAF, they will come up with a bigger budget, I guess. And there's only one more thing that there's a challenge. If they want to bring more mills to meet the growing demand, they will have to come up with the money to build those mills. And one way they thought about it is to open up the business to outside investors. But they thought it over and they decided not to because they were afraid that since they didn't have the money, outside investor might come in, and eventually if the European continue to require higher standard of production, they don't have the money to meet those requirements, while the investors could. And in the end, they will end up with the business that they started with. That's a brief overall view of one of the assessments that we did. You can get the full report, which is available only in Spanish, if you write to the address shown on the screen. Or if you like to see the summary in English, you can go to our website. And that concludes this little presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilia and Miguel. We have one question to kick us off, and the question is, one of the challenges implementing organization space is the lack of resources to plan and carry out ex post assessments. Do you encourage and or support your grantees to carry out ex post assessments?
I would say absolutely. It is a space for grantees to learn what happened with their own initiative, what went well, what didn't, and why. And if they had the resources as well as the skills, the resources to hire somebody local to help them out to do that, absolutely. I think it would be a great experience for grantees to go back and organizations to go back and examine their own practice, their own processes so they can do better in the future. Of course, the question will be the biasness, right? And so I will say if it is possible, of course, put the resources, but, hire a part-time, a consultant that will assure that the methodology, the questions, the instruments are sound enough so there will be not concerns about the finding of the study.
One of the questions one of the issues we discussed in preparing for this meeting was the issue of attribution versus contribution and how you deal with that in these types of assessments. And it's an issue that obviously gets raised over and over again, whether...
Sure, great question. And as I am a sociologist by training, and I will never say that the projects funded by the IAF cause all the results or impact or outcomes of our projects. But I assure you that they contribute to the development of the initiative. They contribute to the impact. They contribute to the outcome of each initiative. And methodologically speaking, a way we illustrate that, we document that, is that by having a good, detailed, sound baseline data at the start of the project, and then at the end, a project history, and then 5 years later to expand on the results. And at the same time, one thing that Miguel nor I mentioned was that in the 6-month visit or a yearly visit to the grantees, our evaluator, our monitors document exogenous variables, exogenous events or happenings that could influence the impact of the initiative. For example, we will know if the Ministry of Agriculture had a campaign to convert from fertilizer to organic production of coffee or sugarcane, for instance. We will know that that will have contributed to the impact of the project. So more or less, we can say that for sure, that more or less we cause those impacts, but not for sure. But for sure, we contribute to the outcomes of the initiative. Did I respond?
I also want to say that everything is based on perception. When we pose the question to our beneficiary, we ask them if this improvement in their living condition, what they attribute that improvement. And it's up to them to answer whether it was the project that was funded by the IAF or if it was something else. So it's all based on perception. And even if we have conducted a control group, you know, it depends on the answer given by the people and how honest they are providing the answer. And I'll tell you that because for 20 years, I was a senior advisor at the U.S. Census Bureau, providing assistance overseas. And the answers that we got doing survey and censuses, we took the word of the respondent as truthful. So everything is based on perception on how truthful the answers are. And even whether it's an exposure assessment or a true impact evaluation, it depends on how people respond to your questions.
We also need to factor in the purpose of the process, right? If it is an impact very scientifically designed and all of that and very expensive, control groups and all of that, and then our grant is $250,000, $240,000. So the process, so sophisticated or soundingly, methodologically speaking, it doesn't justify the process. So the way that I look at it is that we provide, while collecting significant and good information on what worked, what didn't, and why, we provide this space for the grantees to learn about their own initiatives. And at the same time, our foundation representative who help us choose this project, also they learn what was the best thing about that proposal. And us, the development community, are learning from this process. We could go and do very sophisticated evaluations up there, but would be very costly, and perhaps the use would not be as significant as the way that I see the exposed assessment being.
And kind of following up on this conversation, another question is, how do you ensure that participants will tell the IAF-connected monitor the truth regarding whether or not the IAF funding contributed to the outcome? Wouldn't participants tend to indicate the IAF as the contributor since they want to access IAF funds in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question, and how can we tell that?
Well,
it's almost impossible to say that, but like Miguel mentioned before, we go with their whatever they tell us the moment we interview them. But one thing that is important to mention here, that we go 5 years later, we do not come with another grant. I know the expectation at the beginning from the start of the grantee is when I'm getting the next grant. So from the start, we say we're coming here to review and learn with you what happened with the initiative. We're not coming here to give you another grant. You may use that report to send a new proposal, replicate the methodology, replicate the initiative in other communities with other groups to other donors, so to see that you learn and you could improve a new proposal to do so. But we are mindful of that. You know, that from the start we say we're not funding this, we're not coming with a new grant. So, and they agree to do that. That's another very important thing that I want to mention. 5 years later, the Inter-American Foundation does not have any connection with them anymore. There's not grant agreement, there are no audits, there are no visits. So out of 5 years later, they get a phone call from the Inter-American Foundation, can we learn from your initiative what we funded 5 years ago? And so far, we have done 4 pilots plus 13 completed. None of them has said no. All of them have been willing, totally willing, to participate, to gather, to invite the neighbors, to invite other participants in the project to work with us to collect the data and get us interviewed to participate in the focus group for us to get a good picture of what had happened with the project.
The other thing that I was going to add is that the grantee organization might have idea to present a new proposal to PIF, and of course they're going to present a positive picture. But we not only interview the grantee organization staff, we interview the beneficiary, mostly the beneficiary, as well as the former grantee partners and local authorities. So we get different views from different people. So we don't depend exclusively on the comments made by the grantee organization. We depend on all of them combined to get a clear picture of the assessment.
But one more thing is also the monitor, they know the players. That's the other benefit of doing with the monitor who knows from the beginning the grantee organization as well as the beneficiary and other partners in the developing the initiative. So whatever they say, there's a checking, an implicit checking going on through the entire focus group, interviews, and questionnaires. Grantees alike participants cannot be saying things that the monitor didn't hear before.
So what larger lessons has the IAS learned from the findings of these assessments? You mentioned that one of the main purposes you carry out these assessments is to inform your grant making. What have you learned from the, I guess, 17 assessments you've done to date?
That remains a question and a concern from us, and I am being very honest, very sincere, because the process is almost, I say, new. But we work with our program office to come up with the best learning, what we're learning from those initiatives. And one thing is ratifying the responsive model that we have. We empower, we facilitate, we support our grantees to develop themselves, to create their own capacities, to develop their own communities. And one after another initiative, we're finding that out, that that's the way to go about it. It's not designing the project here in Washington, D.C. in our desk. It's allowing the participants, the players, the communities to come up with the best ideas, the best solution to their own problems, to their own needs. And I think that should be eventually, once we have more, the best learning for the Inter-American Foundation. Perhaps we will have to make adjustment in the grant-making process. The timing, for instance, is very long. We take 12 months to 16 months. I don't know exactly how many months take to from the time we receive the proposal to when we fund the organization. So there can be many aspects that the Inter-American Foundation can make adjustments from these experiences. And we want to continue doing more and more and more, eventually bunching them up, making analysis per country, per topic, per size of the grant, and say, for example, the characteristics of the NGOs. How participatory are they? And does it work for the project to be sustainable, to make sure that the NGOs, the grantee, those recipients of our grants have the shared leadership of the vision or the participatory practice so they can be successful at the end with the support of the Inter-American Foundation.
Obviously, one of the biggest challenges maybe to doing these assessments, as you mentioned earlier, is finding the beneficiaries again, or the communities. Mm-hmm. You've worked with the right people to talk to. I don't know if you could say something specific, but what percentage of past beneficiaries are you able to follow up with on average? And do you have any suggestions on how to make it easier to find them, or does the IAF in any way keep in touch with
that's a very important question. And again, the role of our monitor is absolutely key. I did one with the data verifier, our monitor in Sonora, Mexico, eco housing development. The NGO was supposed to partner with the municipalities, the private sector, and develop this model of eco housing model in that community to reduce the air pollution and to make it Adobe more attuned with the locality. Okay, when we got there, the NGO, the computer system did not work, so they didn't have access to any computerized. They didn't know the names of beneficiaries. They didn't have any files. They had been moved from one office to other, so they didn't have any hard copies of anything. But I had the data verifier who had all the documentation from the beginning to the end. So because of her, we were able to interview 50% of the beneficiaries. Out of those that built 100 beneficiaries that build their home using this model, using the IAS support, we were able to locate 50 of them. We went to their homes, we interviewed them, we saw their house, we took pictures, we saw their concern, we saw their happiness, we had their children, and everything due to our evaluators' knowledge of the locality, the players, and the beneficiaries. But overall, the number of interviewees, the number of participants in our focus group or questionnaires depends. It varies per locality. The contexts that we work on are remote. The distances are enormous. I went to San Cristobal, Totonicapan in Guatemala, where the closest home was like, I don't know, 3 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, I don't know. So the distance between one home to another was enormously, so it depends. We are very flexible, and sometimes we arrive with a very sophisticated set of questionnaire, questions, a good questionnaire, but we got there that the best it works is a focus group. So we improvise, we adapt to the situation. So we go with different techniques, different ways to get the information from our beneficiaries.
But as Emilia mentioned, in the case of Mexico was special. We were able to interview 50% of the target population. There are other projects that are very scattered all over the territory that we can conduct interview in only 10% of the cases. But that's because of the difficulty of accessing those areas.
And we try for a random sample of the beneficiaries, just to address the concern, the biasness, or preferred participant in the study. So we adapt, but at the same time we are mindful of the processes, of the methodologies, and the techniques how to collect the data.
Maybe just one last question, since we're technically over time, but how have these ex post assessments been received? I think, as you know, there's been a very strong emphasis on impact evaluation and rigorous methods, or specifically like experimental or quasi-experimental methods for evaluation. Do you find that these assessments have credibility with your stakeholders, and do you see any indication that other donors might be encouraged to adopt this approach?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have gotten questions from this question of biasness and perhaps not too seriously from different directions, including from board members, saying, well, the data verifiers participated from the start, they are biased, they will never tell the story, and other from the very academic, concern about these methods. But I know the reality that the Inter-American Foundation work in, and I think, and I do believe that this is the best way to go about. It's not to say that we don't know how to do the other way. And it's not to say that it cannot be done. Of course it can, if we have the resources and we have the time. But for the subject, for the mission, for what the Inter-American Foundation does, I think this is the base. I believe this is the best way to go about. It provides a space for the grantees to learn about their own initiatives so they continue improving. It provides a space for our professionals in country to improve their evaluation capacity in their own country, so they can move on from the Inter-American Foundation to the World Bank or to other international initiatives in their country. Provides a space for the foundation representative helping select these projects to learn about their own initiative. And here, if we want to learn more, if we want to understand better certain aspects that we came out from the ex-post assessment, then we can go. I want to know. I want to see that the ex-post assessment also raise questions in development, harder question, larger question, more complex question, so we can team together and put the resources perhaps to learn more about other aspects. And also the reception, I think Plan International is here. Project Concern International, is here too. And among my colleagues and evaluators, the initiative itself is well received, has been well received. Of course, we are improving it. Of course, we are fine-tuning it and how to present it in terms of the uses, in terms of how to go about disseminating it. And there's tons of room for improvement. But for what we have done up to today, I am absolutely convinced that this is the way to go about, and it's very useful, very friendly, very cost-effective, and I think very significant, with very significant results. In the federal government, to get a contract, for instance, to do an evaluation, it takes a long time. That's why Miguel said it can be completed in no time, practically, because we have the contractors, we have our in-country monitors, they have the knowledge, they know the IAF, they know the project, they know the context. And one final thing that I'm going to say, the bias is reduced enormously because the monitors depend from my office, from the evaluation office. They do not depend from the program office, making and monitor in their own way the project. And the office is totally separated from the other office. And I have the audit function. We have the audit function. So the performance, the evaluation, and the financial audit are completely different from other part of functions of the Inter-American, other function of the Inter-American Foundation.
Well, Emilia and Miguel, thank you again so much for sharing your experiences with this. I think before we started, you said that you will be at the AEA conference. Correct. So that's another opportunity for folks to connect with Emilia and Miguel. So thanks again so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening, and I hope you can you visit our website and read our ex-post assessment. Thank you.